Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I am going to make a tutorial on how I make YouTube videos. I'm going to put timestamps in the description so that you can skip to whatever part you're most interested in, or if you're just watching this video to hear about the monetization that I promised I was going to talk about, I'll put a timestamp so you can skip right to there if you're not interested in any of this other stuff. Now with that out of the way, let me share with you how today has gone. I have recorded this video almost in its entirety 2 times. I'm recording it on a cell phone taped to a tripod, which is part of why the framing is so weird and stuff like that. And both times I've had horrendous issues and had to just scrap the whole entire thing. So this video is going to be a little more lax and not as put together as it was the first 2 times I filmed it, just because I'm so exasperated. But I think that's probably going to make it more entertaining, because the first 2 times I filmed this, I kind of like had a little bit of stage fright still, because I haven't made many videos with my face in it, and I didn't really know what I wanted to say. But I pretty much know exactly what I want to show you now, and because I already filmed this twice, I did already record the story I was going to record in this video 2 times, and I'm not doing it a 3rd time. So instead we're going to have a little bit of fun, and I'm going to be recording something that's a little more comedic to show you how I do this process, instead of just like a creepypasta. So, I've tried to break down my process into a couple of very easy to explain steps. First and most important step, in my opinion, getting permission. Everything you use on YouTube, if you didn't make it yourself from scratch, you need to get permission for. Whether it's permission by paying a website, I pay a website called Envato Elements to get all of my sound effects. Or if you don't have rights to the music you want to use, I use music written by the Dark Somnium, and he's given me permission to use all of his music in my stories. Whatever you do, you need to have permission. So the biggest part about narrating stories is that you have to have permission from people to narrate them. And it can be a wild ride. I get almost all of my stories off of the No Sleep subreddit. I've also gotten several of them off of authors' personal websites. Unsettlingstories.com, stuff like that. And I always put the author's credits in the description of my video, and in every video at the beginning, I also put their name up on screen, because I want everyone to see, in some way, shape, or form, who wrote the story. Because I've never narrated any stories I've written myself, and I don't think many narrators do. There are a couple. One person that comes to mind that I know writes some of their own stories is Penny Tails Up. She also draws her own art for her channel, and just overall puts so much effort. I don't do all that, but I think it's pretty amazing that some narrators do. So you go and ask for permission, shoot them a little letter, hey, what's up? My name's so-and-so. Here's a link to my channel. I'll credit you any way you want. I personally don't bring up paying for the story unless they ask to be paid. You can if you want. I believe that every person that makes anything deserves, recognition. They deserve to be paid for sure, because their stories, a lot of them are really, really good. But when I get into the monetization aspect of all of this, you'll realize why I don't bring it up. But if an author asks to be paid, if it's within reason, if they're like, hey, I want to have 30% of what the video makes, I'm totally down for that, because I'm not paying any more that I would be making off of it. Because if, you start paying $10, $15, $20 for every narration you do, and you're not making a lot of money, like most people don't, spoiler alert for the monetization section, but most people don't make hardly any money off of doing this stuff. Like, there are a lot of YouTubers that make so much money, but it's just not a lot of money in the narration scene. I'm just gonna tell you that right now. You'll start digging yourself into a hole really fast. So usually after I tell an author that, they'll be like, oh, okay, just go ahead. Like, if you don't make more than X amount of money off of your video, you don't need to pay me. So after you get the permission, you record it. This is probably the funnest part. It's so fun to get into character and act out all of these crazy characters. I love playing insane people, people that are mean. I find it really fun to be really mean and sarcastic. It's really fun, and that's why I do it. My channel is 100% for fun, and I think if you're starting out, when you're first starting out, you should go into it with the same mindset, because even if you get really big, it's probably going to be a while before something like this could be your job. So I would say, instead of chasing numbers, chase having fun, if that makes sense. So, I've got a screen recording here going of Audition, which is what I use to record and edit the raw audio of my narrations. There are hundreds of things you can use to record your audio. You can just record it, like on your phone if you want. You don't have to do all this. But Audition is pretty high quality, and I think it's pretty easy to use. You just hit the little red record button and you're good to go. Here's what the waveform looks like so far that I've been recording. There's these really big spikes over here. You don't want stuff like this in your narration. This is from when I clapped to line up the audio with the video, but you typically don't want big giant peaks like this when you're narrating, because it's gonna be really loud and hard to work with. I'm gonna put a little marker in here, right there. And that's also how I mark when I make mistakes. When I'm narrating, I put a little marker, and you don't have to, but it's a little tip that has helped me save a ton of time, because when you're narrating a story that's an hour long and you make a ton of mistakes, it sucks to have to sit through the story and listen to every single second of it. I, like I said at the beginning, am not going to be narrating that story that I was going to use as an example for the third time. Instead, I'm going to be acting out a scene from a movie that me and my dad really like. And Dad, this is for you. I'm gonna rewatch the scene so I can make sure I'm gonna try to get it right, but I can't do accents of any kind except for Southern, because I'm from the South. So this is gonna be pretty awful, but for the sake of entertainment and education, I'm gonna do it. So, before I start narrating, I set up my mic and everything. You don't have to have an expensive mic to do narration. You can buy a mic from Walmart for $20 and, that'll get you where you need to be. I'll put, all of the equipment I use down in the description, but this is more of just a tutorial on how I do it and not trying to teach you every single little bit, because we'd be here all day. So if you're interested in all the equipment, I'll put it down in the description so that you can find it there. You want to have your mic about as far away from your face as this length is when you put it up to your chin. Touches the mic. That's about as far as you want to be. Some people talk really loud. I typically narrate pretty quiet. I talk kind of softly when I narrate, so I sit fairly close to the mic. Okay. The very sexual, the very toit. Austin Powers Farja! His what? His Farja, Dr. Evil. His Farger? What's a Farger? His Farja! The Farja! Yeah, gold member, I don't speak freaky deaky Dutch. There it is. So, now that we have our recording that is going to be very popular and get us millions of views on YouTube, we're going to take the recording and put it into FL Studio. But before we put it into FL Studio, almost forgot this step, you need to edit it if there are mistakes, which is why I use the markers a lot of the time. And you can apply filters that will take away some of the background noise, filters that can make your voice more bassy. I used to not put bass in my voice. My first 5 or 6 videos, I didn't do it. And you can really hear the difference, because putting bass in your voice, if you have a voice that's not as deep like mine, it'll make your voice sound more full and make the narration sound more pleasant to listen to. And unfortunately, because I'm using the audio recording equipment and software to record myself doing this tutorial, it doesn't let me stop the recording so that I can show you how to put the filters on. But if you just Google, putting filters on audio, it'll come up with a billion results, and me showing you wouldn't be so helpful anyway, because every single person's voice and audio is going to be different, and this is serving as a tutorial to how I do it, but not a tutorial to how you should necessarily do it, because unless your setup is exactly the same as mine and the room you record in is just like the one I record in, it's not going to do anything for you to do it just like how I do it. I'm just making you aware that that is the next step I would do before I export the audio into FL Studio, which I will do now. And one more thing about Audition is also, if you do a really long story and you want to make sure that you don't have to cut the audio a million times to make it, a little shorter, you should also look into downloading a delete silence diagnostic. If you just Google that and put in whatever software you're using, you should be able to find the thing I'm talking about. It'll take out all of the silences that are way too long so that it sounds like you're having a cohesive conversation, even if you narrated them with them being like 5 minutes apart. So this is FL Studio, which stands for Fruity Loops Studio. It is the software I use to add in music and sound effects and do the final bit of mastering on my end. Like I mentioned earlier, adding bass to my voice, I do it in here. So you just find your little audio thing, drag it in, just like that, just drag and drop. Sounding great. This is already sounding like a winner, let me tell you. So once you put it in, usually obviously it's on a much bigger scale, so it might take a little while to load and stuff, but so once you put it in, for the sake of example, this is actually the Dark Somnium's FL Studio. When I do this, I go back to my laptop back there. I do all of my work on my laptop just because I don't have a computer and work over there, so I don't really know my way around his FL Studio, but so you would take whatever sound effect you need, drag and drop it. You can, change the volume. Every single one of these softwares is going to be different, but if you want to get FL Studio, I really like FL Studio. There's a learning curve, but I learned how to do this from pretty much scratch in just like a month. So don't feel discouraged if you start doing this and it seems really hard, because you can do it, I promise. You can absolutely do it. There are sound effects for pretty much everything under the sun. I can think of pretty much anything and type it into that website, Envato Elements, and it'll come up with a sound effect. So you add your sound effects, add your music, you make sure that none of it's too loud, you can still hear your narration over the music and sound effects. Something I personally struggle with is that it's kind of hard to learn what the balance is, but it truly is just trial and error. And a lot of the time, I'll ask Somnium to look at it to tell me if he thinks it sounds okay. So if you're unsure, ask a friend or a family member to listen to it with you or for you and tell you what they think, because if you sit here and do this for long enough, it just starts to kind of sound bad no matter what, especially listening to your own voice, because who likes the sound of their own voice? Pretty much nobody, honestly. I guess just what I'm trying to say is don't get discouraged, because this is probably the hardest part, doing the sound design, and it takes a little bit to learn. But that being said, also, if you want to become a narrator, you don't have to do this. You can just record your narration, edit it, and put it up. There are narrators that don't even put music in the background, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. So just do whatever is in your capabilities, whatever you're most comfortable with. It's all up to you. Don't let anyone tell you that you have to do it a certain way, because you don't. So once you have your beautiful, finished masterpiece that's gonna get you 1 million views, save it. You wanna always have a backup. Trust me, you wanna have 1 million backups. I have lost projects so many times, and It's just the most heartbreaking, horrible feeling when you lose a project you've been working on for 6 to 8 hours straight, and then you lose it. It's just the worst feeling in the world. So after you do that, pretty much all of these, I'm assuming all of these softwares, you're gonna need to export it. So go to export, wherever that may be in your software. I always export my narrations as a WAV file. I'm pretty sure it doesn't really matter. You can export it as an MP3, whatever you want. This works well for me, especially since I go on then to put it into Premiere, which is how I put up the background of like stock footage and all the writing I need to put on there, the title of the story and the author's name. So export as a WAV file, make sure you put it somewhere that's going to be easy for you to find. I usually put the title of the story, and then in all caps I put final, because I want to make sure that I know where it is, especially since when you're doing this, you can end up having like 10 copies of it, a bunch of different saves. So make sure you differentiate them, because you're going to be sitting there trying to figure out what it is for like way too long. Stay hydrated, but do not drink energy drinks like me. That is a big no-no. You know what they always say, do as I say, not as I do? Because we're all really hypocritical and do things we shouldn't. All right, here's Premiere. And this is the final step before you're ready to upload. You don't have to do this. You can just upload the audio straight to YouTube, but then there'll be no background, so it'll be kind of boring. And that's why we do this step. And also, I do this step because I like to give credit to the authors next to the title of the story on the screen of the video. There it is. There's our audio. I also take this time to check over here on the screen. It'll show you how loud your audio is, and I'll play it. And it's kind of quiet. I usually try to get the audio up here past -12, but you do not want it going over 0 and into the red. That's your audio starts peaking, and then it'll be way too loud. It might blow out someone's speakers. It might make it sound kind of crackly. So that's a very important step. You want to make sure the audio isn't too loud. But if it's too quiet, you'll get 1,000,001 comments about how it's really quiet, and then, you can comment back, why don't you just turn up the volume? And then they'll never answer, and you won't know why they can't just turn up the volume. So just make sure it's loud, because there's always going to be someone that's like, it's too quiet. Next step, we're going to bring in some stock footage. I don't know where Ronnie keeps his stock footage. I've been looking for the stock footage for what feels like 20 minutes. All right, so this isn't my computer. This is Somnium's computer, and I don't know where he keeps his stock footage, but this is spiraling so quickly. All right, so I don't know where he keeps his stock footage, but you download stock footage, just an MP4 or whatever, or an MOV file of whatever footage you want. Usually I try to stick with the theme of the video. If the video's about clowns, try to find stock footage of a creepy clown or something. But, you can do whatever you want. You can even use the same stock footage over and over, because no one's really going to be paying too much attention, so this part isn't the most important part, but I still like to do it. And then I go up to graphics, and I add text, and I put in the title of it, and then, you can change the font, you can change the color, you can make it have a shadow on it, and all kinds of stuff. You can do whatever you want, spice it up, make it a little more interesting to look at. The typeface that I use is called Glaive, and I think it's really creepy, and I like it a lot. And then, when it plays, you can make it fade in, and it'll fade in, and it'll have the name of the video. I put the name of the author underneath it. This was so much more well put together the first 2 times I recorded this, but since all that footage is unusable, now we have this. So after you do that, you render it, I would not recommend trying to render something like this in 4K, even though that, for a lot of things, is the default. They try to render it as high quality as possible. But just for example, when I rendered my last story, which was 40 minutes long, it took almost 3 hours for my computer to render it. So I would recommend 1080p, maybe even 720, because all you're doing is putting up a video with some background stock footage. So it doesn't matter too awfully much, as long as the audio is high quality. And it won't affect the audio if you make it render in 1080 or 720p. So you render it, and then you go and you upload to YouTube. And that's basically it. That is an extremely simple version of how I get this done. This video was a lot more of a mess than I anticipated. The first 2 times of me recording it not working really has taken a lot of it out of me. But that is basically what I do. Obviously without the jokiness, and it takes a very long time recording. For example, if I'm recording an hour-long video, like the finished product is going to be an hour long, I usually have an hour and 20 or an hour and 30 minutes of recording because of mistakes, and you have to reread it a few times sometimes because you don't like the take. Sometimes your voice just isn't there, because using your voice so much, it starts to get tired. It's just like using any other muscle, and you have to practice at it. Sometimes I can't get the voice quite right that I'm going for, and so I have to do it several times. It just really depends. And really, all of these steps could be in-depth videos in and of themselves, but the purpose of this video was just to give you an overview of kind of what I do. And now I'm gonna glaze over kind of, if I was actually doing this for serious and not just jokingly for this little tutorial, how long it would take. So like I said, it will take almost an hour and a half. I'm basing all of this on around if I made an hour-long video for simplicity. Hour and a half of recording, almost 30 minutes of editing down the audio. That's with, putting all of the filters on it and stuff. Put it into FL Studio. When I do things in FL Studio, I listen through the recording all the way through. Every single word I listen to, because sometimes I'll hear little clicks, my voice will make a weird noise, you can hear me going, and I like to cut that out if I can, because it's not very pleasant to just hear someone breathing in the mic. And then I do all of the sound design, and honest to goodness, the sound design takes so long. It is such a long and intensive process, because you're trying to make it, you're trying to create a world for the listeners so that they can get into the story. And that just takes so much longer than I thought before I started this. I can spend almost 3-4 hours on the sound design, even though the video is only an hour long. After that, you put it into Premiere, find the stock footage. That's one of the easier parts. Put it all together. And so at the end of the day, we worked on this story for like 6 or 7 hours. And sometimes it takes longer because you run into issues. Sometimes my laptop will crash all the time. I'll lose a lot of stuff I was doing even though I try to keep backups. You just never know. And so it is a very long process, and that's why sometimes I can post 3 videos in 3 days, and sometimes I can only post 3 videos in 2 weeks. It just takes a long time. And that's why I'm happy that for me this is a hobby and not a job, because it's just a lot. And when things go wrong, they usually go very wrong, and you lose so much of what you were working on, and it's so disheartening when that happens. But that being said, this is so fun, and if you want to try it, I think that you should absolutely do it, even if you're just kind of curious if you'll like it. There's no right or wrong way to do it, and just have fun with it. And let me just mention also, I promised a lot of people actually that I would tell everyone how I get my thumbnails for my videos. I go onto Instagram, actually. A lot of people you can go anywhere. but I personally go onto Instagram and I type in like dark art, horror-based art, and find all these artists that no one really has touched any of their art because they're on Instagram, and most people go to like ArtStation or find artists other places. And most of my thumbnails, actually, it's almost a 50-50 split between these two photographers I found and these two artists I found. And you ask whatever artist you want for permission, and they gave me permission, and then that's how I get my thumbnail art. I put it into Photoshop and, throw up a background and put on the text, but I don't do the art myself. I saw some people thinking that I do the art myself, and no, that's not me. But I do always put, once again, the credits in the description. So if you want to see any of the artists that I use, you can go into the description of any of my videos and find links to their Instagram pages. Sometimes you gotta be careful, because when you're putting stuff into YouTube in the description, the links don't work. I get comments sometimes like, this link is broken, but just make sure you double and triple check everything. You don't want to have, any typos or anything. You want to make sure that everyone can get to the artist, the authors. You want to make sure that they all get the recognition they deserve. So just try to be careful. It's kind of a learning process because YouTube messes things up a lot. So now that you've seen everything on a kind of a small, simple scale, I'm going to go over monetization. So I am monetized. I'm what's called a YouTube partner. That's what they call you when you get enough views and subscribers to be monetized. At the time that I was monetized, which was around February of this year, I met the requirements, which is have 1,000 subscribers and have 4,000 watch minutes, I believe that is. And that sounds like a lot, but you can actually get there surprisingly fast, especially since as a narrator, people like to re-listen to stories, so you can get there fairly fast if you're going to try to be a narrator. I don't know how it is for people that make other types of content, but it took me about a month and a half to get monetized. And that being said, I don't make much money. You've got the top big YouTubers that make just tons and tons of money. And I think a lot of people, because of that, think that YouTubers, like all of us that are monetized, make thousands of dollars or something, but that's just not the case. This is something that I feel pretty passionate about letting people know, because it's really disheartening when you message an author and them not knowing that I'm not going to make hundreds of dollars off of their story or whatever the case may be. They'll say something like, yeah, but only if you pay me $50. Or, yeah, but you gotta give me this much of the revenue, and if you're not gonna make this much, I don't want you doing my story. And not all authors are like that, of course. Not even most of them are like that. But I have come in contact with many that are like that. And some of that is because the YouTube community has had a lot of drama with the no-sleep community, with people stealing stories, people making thousands off of people's stories and then not giving them any money for it, and then they feel like they've been cheated, and I get that. But I just want to be really clear that you should make sure you make it clear to the author about how much you'll be making. Now, by law, as a YouTuber, if you're monetized, you are not allowed to tell exact numbers of what you make. You sign a contract when you get monetized. So give them a ballpark estimate of about how much you think you'll make, and they'll probably understand. Most of them are very understanding. Or I'll just say, no thank you. Maybe one day if I'm making enough money, I'll come back and ask again. So while I can't tell you exactly how much I make, I can give you ballpark hypothetical estimates. And so I will be very open and say about every month, I could probably expect $200, which I think is really great. I mean, $200 or however many, dollars you make, it's still money, any extra money helps. But you have to have a very big channel and get a lot of views to make enough money for this to be a job or to pay bills, whatever. to be any sort of supplemental income. But it also depends, because I know of channels that have, say, 80 to 90,000 subscribers and make tens of thousands of dollars a month. So truly, it is very hit or miss, because I also know channels that are much bigger than me that make no money. They're not monetized, or they're bigger than me and they only make a few dollars off of each video, or a few dollars every month. So there is no baseline. There's no general amount of money you're going to make. It is all individual to your channel. It's all individual to your channel and your content. So just make sure you're open with whomever you're asking for their stories. Like, I don't make enough money off of my channel to pay everyone $10 for their story. If I do, if I do 15 or 16 stories in 1 month, I can't pay them all $10 to $20 for their story, especially since when you put out a story, perhaps it'll make $20 for that month, but then the next month, it'll make 10 cents. So the way that people end up making a lot of money off of YouTube is that all the money you make off of your videos start to compound, and then a lot of the income you make off of YouTube is from videos you made months ago, because it just keeps on compounding, and the more videos you have, the more money you'll make. Me, I pretty much always make the same amount of money because I put up the video makes the money it's going to make, and then it really doesn't make any more. It makes maybe a couple more cents. And that's why I've had a couple of authors whom I was splitting the revenue with. Usually it's a 70-30 split for me. I think that's pretty fair. I would even let them have more. I don't really care. I don't make enough to care. If they wanted it to be 50-50, that would be fine with me too. But it was 70-30, and the first month, I sent the author about $20. I took the total amount I made and then did the split and sent them the 30%, which was around $20. And then the next month, when I did the split, I was gonna have to send them like 6 cents. And so I messaged them and told them, and they were like, yeah, don't worry about it. They said, unless you make another, unless you have enough to send me like another $20, I don't care. And most authors will be like that. So if you're gonna get into this, do not be afraid to message authors and be like, I didn't make anything off of this video this month, and it's probably not gonna make any more but a couple of cents. And unless they're the most money-grubbing person ever, they probably won't care about having that 6 cents. I think that's about it. I touched on pretty much everything. I think with this video, the thing I was most passionate about talking about was the monetization, because I see a lot of people treated very unfairly. People that want to just get into this for a hobby, like me. We're not those giant narration channels or YouTube channels that do other things that aren't creepypasta that make thousands. There aren't very many of them. You're lucky if you have a channel big enough that you can live off of it, and it's just not very common. So I just hope that becomes more widespread knowledge, because I'm tired of, people get comments, you're just in it for the money, and I'm sitting over here, I know a lot of other narrators now. And when they get comments like that, or when I get comments like that, it's so hard not to just comment back like, I'm making 10 cents off of this video, right? I don't know. There's always going to be people out there that don't care to learn or don't know, so I don't know. I hope this video maybe educated you a little bit on something. If nothing else, perhaps educated you on how good I am at Austin Powers impressions. If you make a channel, send me an email. My little RomNex contact email I put in my descriptions. If you want to collab, if you want me to take a look at what you're making and let you know what I think, or if you just want to send it to me, I would love to take a look. I love when people make channels. I especially love when people make channels and then they said they were a viewer of mine, they make their channel, and then we get to work together. It's so cool, and I'm just really excited to see the type of stuff that you guys make. And that's about it. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm gonna have more narrations coming out soon. I just kind of work whenever I feel like working. Since this is a hobby, I just kind of do it in my free time, and I've been kind of busy working on, my main job. So I will have more narrations out soon. I hope you're all doing all right. I can't wait to see the comments, to see what people think. I hope that, if nothing else, this video at some points might have gotten a little chuckle out of you. And I hope y'all have a good one.